Alrighty, and Tina's on. All right, so it is our first Tuesday of 2025, and thank you all for being here. We have made leaps and bounds with going from mycelium to dot lead, and now Soulful Bloom is official. Memberships are ready. You can join the community. We will do a whole call separate for that because there's a lot to learn and a lot to do and contribute and participate with the community. And the reason that Brock is our guest speaker to kick off this entire new year is because he is one of the very first people I worked with. And I feel like we've been learning and elevating and collaborating together individually and collectively for a while now. And witnessing his journey from the moment I met him to now it's really transformative and inspiring. And January and February, as we know, are months where we see a lot of mental health crises, a lot of depression, a lot more addictions, a lot more people in need for resources. And I think he's a wonderful resource. And I hope that his story inspires all of us to keep going even when it's tough, even when it's challenging. And if there's anyone that you feel like this could help, that is the whole point. And so that we can change our frequency and then have a big ripple effect in the world. So, Brock, thank you for being here. This is so incredible. It is all yours, my friend.
All right. My name is Brock Vollertsen. I'm a veteran. I was in the Army for 13 years, both as an infantryman, as well as a combat medic. 20, and started my career as an RN. I am a father, single father. I've got a 5-year-old son who I have about 50% of the time. And he is absolutely wonderful. I love my career. I love my family. I love the connections that I have made. My life is wonderful. Um, there was a lot of really good things in my life before. But it was really hard to really isolate that and be able to find the joy in the everyday. From a young age, I'm ADHD. I've got quite a bit of trauma from some childhood trauma, and then further on throughout the military, throughout my medical career. I've always chosen kind of fast-paced environment stuff. I worked in EMS. I've been in the ICU, did open heart surgery, recovery, trauma ICU. So I've gotten to see a lot of things, and I've struggled with addiction. After I got out of the military, I was in a pretty toxic relationship. Some of that was my own doing. Some of it was due to my behavior patterns that sucked in people that I did not need in my life. Um, a lot of that was my doing, actually. Um, so I struggled with ADHD and self-medicated with drugs and alcohol, some of which were psychedelics. Um, and I got sober in September. It'll be 6 years. So I've got 5 years of sobriety, um, and my life got really good after I got sober. I started really analyzing the things about myself that were creating a lot of the toxicity in my life. Um, and but there was a disconnect. And I had gotten in touch with somebody. I had made a friend who started talking about psychedelics and microdosing and just ranting and raving about it. She's like, "Oh, I've got this person. I need you to put you in contact with this person." And I had had um, some preconceived notions about what psychedelics in medicine really meant, where it bridged this gap between, in my head of this hippy dippy um, type mindset versus medicine and science. And um, and but I was at a point in my life where I was still sober, but I was very much struggling to connect with my son. I was struggling professionally. I was struggling um, to find joy in my life. Um, and I was on so many levels that looking back, I can't even believe that I was surviving. And then when I met Christy, um, I was willing to be open-minded towards anything. I was looking for a lifeline. Um, and I started doing research, and a little bit of my mind was there was still this alcoholic mindset of like, maybe I'll get high, but I'll be doing it under the guise of science. I will be doing it under the guise of medicine. So it's okay. That's the first time I've actually said that out loud, funny enough, but there was that portion there. Um, and so there was also that fear. So there was the yay excitement portion of that, but there was also the fear. Like, am I about to dive into something that is going to catastrophically affect my sobriety, my parenthood, all of these things? But it was, I had attempted suicide right before I got sober. And I was very much struggling with that mindset at that time. And I came in and I remember being just kind of all over the place. And Christy settled me down. She explained the science behind this, and what it really could do for me. And it was all kind of a haze back then. But looking back, I can see the wisdom in everything that she was talking to me about. Um, and I did. I was willing to try it. And I at first, actually, Christy and I were talking about this before we went live, but we started talking about the speed of this medicine. And at first, I remember the first time I took it, and I remember I called her 2 hours afterwards, and I was like, "Oh my gosh, is this how people feel every day? Is this what life is supposed to be like?" I was on two antidepressants and an anti-anxiety at the time. For PTSD, ADHD, I was on Adderall, I was on, several different medications. And I had yet to feel contented in myself because I'd been trying to do all of this work, but I was not connected to myself. And so the first thing I noticed with this was this ability to be free of this extreme anxiety, to be able to feel joy in the moment, to be able to feel the sunshine and be like, wow, this is a good thing. And there's something very profound about that. And I thought that was the medicine. And to an extent, that is a portion of the medicine. And granted, this is just my experience. I can't speak to everybody else, but this, some people's experience may be different. But for me, I was like, this is the medicine. And so I remember really thinking how this long term. I remember asking her several times, like, what does this look long term? And how is this going to look? And how is it going to work? And blah, blah, blah. And one of the big things that I wish I could go back and tell myself back then was to not worry about that. Your body is going to tell you. And my body did tell me. After about 3 months, I took a break. Um, I had done some macrodosing, and really my body was telling me that I needed to take a break. And subsequently, over the next 3 to 4 months, I didn't microdose, I didn't macrodose, I didn't touch anything. Um, and after about 4 months, so this is at about month seven, I am looking back and seeing the profound changes in myself that I did not believe were possible. There were so many things within myself about myself that I wanted to be able to change. My connection with my son, I very much struggled being a single parent and task wise, I was hitting every single check mark, right? I was always there. I was always doing the things, but I was never quite there. And I know that I wanted to change. And I found myself looking back and realizing that my relationship with my son had grown exponentially without work that I was putting out. Um, and it was huge. There was my addiction with nicotine, which was almost bigger and more daunting than my addiction with alcohol. What I found with alcohol is I was self-medicating so I could be the social chameleon that I felt like I needed to be. If I was anxious socially or otherwise, I could drink and I could be that person. But with alcohol or with nicotine, it was this physiological addiction that I could not get past. And next thing I knew, I just felt like it was toxic in my body. And I was able, now granted, not to say it was easy to stop, but um, that drive was there, and I didn't want that in my body anymore. Um, I was able to take a step back from a lot of the things that were driving my life that were more survival instincts than the things that were going to bring joy and completion to my life. I stopped investing into relationships that just weren't doing well, and it wasn't this teeth gnashing. That was probably the most profound thing about any of the things that changed in my life. None of them were just that were big, teeth gnashing things. Oh, I got to cut this out and have these big conversations. It just worked itself out. And I allowed the medicine to work as it should. Um, to start healing some of these connections within myself, to start breaking some of the patterns within myself and stop fighting myself so much within them. And then about 3 or 4 months ago, I started microdosing again. Um, and I did some macrodosing, some microdosing, and what I found is that the the microdosing was what was helping me medicinally in my day to day. The macrodosing was allowing me to recognize some big things about myself that needed to change. And I think that I think that there's a place for both in these journeys. Um, I think that in the beginning, I probably would have held off or maybe done the big macrodosing in the beginning to recognize some of the places where I needed my life to change, and then stuck with microdosing. Um, After I would microdose, it would leave me in this place where I didn't feel like I wanted to have psilocybin in me or for a couple weeks at a time. And in these times where I really needed it, I think that it was potentially counterproductive for me. Now, granted, that's a very personal experience, but one that I do wish um, I would have been told. But even if I had been told, I may not have heard it. Um, Throughout this whole thing, the mushrooms have kind of told me what I needed to do. Um, and so when I came back into it after that 3 or 4 month stint, I did. I hesitated and did not macrodose as much. I reduced my dosage and took it every day, other than the days I was working. And I found that I grew exponentially through that. My periods of depression were less, and not to say that I don't still have them. In fact, I'm kind of struggling with it right now. But the beautiful thing about mushrooms is that I get to experience both good, bad, and I don't know if depression is not good when you're not able to get out of bed and you're not able to brush your teeth and you're not able to communicate with the people that bring you joy. It's not good. It's not healthy. But I have been able to find the positives in that, use the microdosing to be able to pull myself out after 2 days or 3 days. Whereas before it was 2 months where I could not function. I was still going to work. I was still, but I was a skeleton. And so there are many pieces of this where there is instant medicine, but there is the long-term medicine. And the long term was breaking some of these cycles without having to fist fight myself to do those things. It was that I recognized that these were things that needed to change, but it also opened my mind, which was huge. I talked a little bit in the beginning about my preconceived notions with what psilocybin and the hippie community or any of that. I grew up in the deep south, and very much had some preconceived notions about what this meant, both for myself spiritually, for myself socially, and professionally. Um, and have come to realize that none of that matters. None of it matters. It's all silly preconceived notions, that blocked my way into being healthy. And the ability to be able to open my mind, to things that were very scary. Um, it was one of the most profound, and I keep saying that, oh, this was the most profound. All of it is profound. All of it is beautiful. And I cannot speak highly enough about what it has done for my gut, what it has done for my mentality with health. I used to be very vain, which I believe stemmed from fears of, um, what other people thought of me and what I thought of other people. Um, so much of this has changed. My mentality with health and how I eat and how I feel about food and what it does for me. Um, so much has This has benefited me in so many ways. And honestly, my journey's not done. I still, even at a year, feel like I am still at the beginning phases of it. And I don't know where all of you guys are within your journey. But wherever it might be, if there is anything that I can do to help, to explain, to clarify about why I started and how it has helped and some of the things I've done, I'm very happy to answer any of those questions, both here and, she's got my phone number. She can give my phone number out to anybody who'd like to reach out, or even have suggestions for me. I'd love to hear it. So I'm going to open it up. If anybody has any questions now, please ask in ramble.
So I just want to say I so appreciate the rawness in this because we haven't had a guest who's just raw like this. We've had presenters and like, very nice, amazing presentations, but this is like a real healing moment, right? To show up, to be witnessed, to be vulnerable, to share. And thank you, Brock. This is so good. And it's so good to hear because there's no cookie cutter positive polarity to a healing journey. You're going to have ebbs and flows, and we're going to make, a milestone, and then it's going to reveal 10 more healing, you know, shadows that have to be confronted. So this is so good. I have a question.
Okay.
So, how did your military and medical background shape your perspectives on mental health and healing? Did it make it harder to come to psychedelics or easier?
Um, I think that, I kind of broke away from, because I've been a huge since I remember when I was, it was about 2 years before or 3 years before I got out of the military. I was fresh off of a deployment and I was struggling. I'd actually had a home invasion where somebody had kicked our door down. My wife at the time, was pregnant with my son, and he was going to kill us. And so I shot him. And I struggled very much after that, more than a lot of the deployment stuff that I struggled with. And I remember being drunk and, just being this mess in front of this, this guy who had been on three deployments, Afghanistan, Iraq, and again in, I think Afghanistan. Anyway, it's irrelevant. He was the man, and I was struggling, and he saw it. And he was a staff sergeant. I was a a specialist at the time, and he pulled me aside and talked to me about mental health. He talked to me about EMDR and different modalities of mental health and how it could help. Um, and it really opened my mind up to breaking free from the mindset that therapy is for other people. It's not for us. It's not for me. Like, how could they understand all of these things? So that was my first break into understanding that mental health is important and getting treatment for it is important. Um, and so I can see how my preconceived notion of the hippie, and I do that in quotes because that's how I used to think. That is not how I believe it to be now. It was very much demonized of using these substances in the military. As far as mental health and crossing it over, I had started to see some of that in medicine. Started hearing nurses talking about it. But see, the fear with me was with medicine was my licensure and having that taken away from me. That was really kind of the hard part about it. So, as I progressed in understanding with mental health, and I really deep dove into mental health as I progressed through, and especially getting sober and helping other vets. Recognize that alcoholism and substance use and all of these things are so negative, but there's reasons behind it, and it's not as scary as it seems. And there's help for that. And then there was this, and it's like I can see how this could be this scary thing. Oh, it's using drugs. It's using drugs and substances to cover up or change. And how wrong was I? Um, so I don't know if I actually answered your question, but my mindset definitely did change. But I think it was slowly, bit by bit, and recognizing that I don't understand everything. And in that, if I'm just open to recognizing that I might not be right about everything, that maybe I might learn something. And then slowly but surely, um, I look back at what I was then, and it's such a drastic change with mindset. But it was slowly, bit by bit, closing my ears off and opening my closing my mouth and opening my ears to other people and recognizing that I don't know everything. Um, and a lot of what I thought that I knew was nothing more than preconceived notions.
Amazing. Yeah, that's a lot that you've gone through. Tina, you have a question.
Sure do. What an incredible sharing, Brock. Thank you so much. I'm curious about your macro journeys and if you would be willing or interested to share like what your preparation protocols might have been, how if like when you were setting intentions or how you approached the journey and a little bit about the integration after and how you navigated through your life from there.
Okay, so phenomenal question, and one that I really like question myself a lot throughout. I very much when I first started, we'll just start there. I started with, I think, Christy, it was 3 on, 2 off, or 3 on, 1 off. And I remember feeling like I wanted to take more. And I believe I started with 100 milligrams of psilocybin, and then I did 200 milligrams on that iteration. And what I felt a lot in that 3 months, that first 3 months, I stuck with that protocol by and large. One thing that Christy told me to do was just trust my gut with it. And so I did a little bit of that. I did a little bit more, a little bit less as far as frequency. And pretty consistently, it was either 100 milligrams or 200 milligrams. Um, and one of the things that it did with me was is I wound up getting a lot of, in the beginning, it was good. It shut down my fight or flight. I was doing a lot of that yawning when I would feel it starting to come on. I never really felt like I was high, which was why I was able to keep doing this. I felt 100% in control of my faculties. Um, but as I progressed through, I didn't want to start taking amphetamines again. I did not want to start taking stimulants for my ADHD. Um, and in fact, that's a big portion of my journey was trying to not be on that because I felt like it took a lot of my personality away. A lot of the I was able to be very task oriented and get things done, but it was not healthy for me. And in fact, recently, I have finally genuinely stopped taking stimulants. And I struggled on and off with that. When I would take the mushrooms, it would shut down my fight or flight, which I now realize I was using my fight or flight a lot as how to get things done within my life. Um, and I think that scared me a little bit. But also, too, I didn't feel like I was able to function in environments when I needed my fight or flight. So this second time that I started doing it, I didn't realize it, but Chrissy had given me a formula that was closer to 75 milligrams. Um, and when I am not working, I take it every day. And I do not get so shut down that I can't get into a fight or flight response if I need it, but it is not there all the time. So it was my protocol for me now is that I take it every day. That I am not because I work with patients. I'm still working as a nurse. So I can't afford to take it while I'm at work. For liability reasons, obviously. Would I like to be able to see that change one day? That it is not seen as a drug, that I could be able to take it at work. I would love that. That's not the world that. Um, but at that 75 milligram area, I feel significantly better and I don't feel like I'm shut down as much. Did that answer your question?
What about the macro part of it? When
Oh,
you,
Yeah, I'm just
the macro
yeah,
portion?
yeah. Yeah, I was curious about your protocol around preparing for macro journeys. And
So that's okay. So I totally didn't answer your question at all because you were asking about macros. Um,
okay, I
so
got
um, as far as macros and micros, to be honest, I did not set intentions. In the my first 3 month bout of doing this, I didn't set intentions with both. I think I kind of treated the macros as a way to not necessarily do a drug, but I didn't really fully understand the implications behind what a macro could do for you, or for me. Um, and so I didn't set intentions. And I think that that's probably why I didn't get as much out of it. Um, and one of my friends, she was talking a lot about intention setting. And I had done a lot of, trying to be more open minded. And I was like, you know what? And even Christy had said, set intentions. And I was like, oh, yeah, I am. But I was treating it more as with the micros more as medicine and the macros more as a maybe a way to open my mind a little bit more. Um, when I started setting my intentions of these are the things that I am trying to change. And if I think one of them was with nicotine, and the other was with amphetamines. And so, trying to not take amphetamines, Adderall or Vyvanse or any number of things on how to reconnect with myself and be able to be my best self without that. And so, when I started setting these intentions, my life, that's really, I think, when the macro doses really did start being beneficial and even with the micros as well. um, I was able to settle myself and start connecting myself more with being grounded and doing things that brought me joy and brought me grounding. So waking up and saying, hey, these are the things that I want to achieve. I set those as my intentions. And then the macro dose was like, hey, how about you stop going to sleep at 11 o'clock at night and start waking up early and going outside and being cold for a little bit and being present in your body and genuinely meditating. to find some groundedness. And when I started setting those intentions, that's when the magic behind the macrodoses really started happening for me.
When
Did
you
that
were
answer your question better?
Yeah, so much. Yes, yeah, thank you so much for that.
when you say
Absolutely.
macro, what medicine were you using?
Um, so a couple different variations. So it was typically a gram to a gram and a half of psilocybin, and especially other types of mushrooms. So the you're gonna have to remind me of the name. It starts with the I or the E. Enigma. Um, that one was profound, but also using the DMT pens with that. When I first, and that's really the intention setting was critical for getting beneficial results. I would take a gram to a gram and a half of the mushrooms with the DMT, and that's where it was very much leading me into um, a lot of big changes.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, DMT is really interesting. If it's your medicine, it can be really profound.
If you're using it in the correct way and with very clear intention set, and the set of threes was very big, of using a very much lighter amount, the next time using a little bit more, and then a little bit more, and guiding yourself into that process, rather than just snowballing, just going a million, 0 to 60, going slow and dipping your toes into it to understand what that feeling is, and then slowly going into it was very beneficial. Because the first time I did it, it terrified me, and I didn't touch it for another 6 months.
The DMT.
The DMT with the psilocybin.
Okay. You went too deep,
Too fast,
too
and
fast.
with zero intention.
Okay.
Um, and I think that being able to have those intentions set, they change and morph as you get into it slowly. You recognize, okay, it really wasn't this big thing. It was really this smaller, more subtle thing that was causing this that allowed me to grow within that. It helped me find intention with the bigger intention set. I
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
don't know if that makes sense, but
There's questions and answers within the answers in the questions.
exactly.
Something like that. Yeah. Tina.
Just to follow up, I'm curious too about your integration afterwards, because I find that I need fairly significant amount of time after a big journey. So just curious what your integration looked like.
Integration, how so? Like, talk to me about that.
Well, I find that I'm gifted with the experience and everything that I learned from the experience, and it sort of does two things. It kind of smooths the karmic road in your future because you're really changing, your relationships with the world through those kind of insights. And so I'd find that like I would have to sort of catch up to the experience, right? Like
Oh my God.
maybe,
And I see what you're saying.
yeah.
Um, that's exactly where the journey over a year of finding how the medicine works slowly over time is that I feel like there is a lot to unpack within a single journey of a macrodose. Um, there were some very profound things that the next day I was like, this is how I live my life. For instance, the doing the things that brought me grounding, um, waking up early, getting enough sleep, um, you know, how I live my day to day life and the things that were important. A lot of that happened almost immediately. I was like, this is exactly how I need to be operating in my life to bring the maximal amount of focus, concentration, joy, passion in all the right places. Those happen very quickly. Some of the other integrated bigger lessons, more mindset lessons happen very slowly and after a couple journeys. And I recognize patterns within it and then tried to pull that out and try to dissect it throughout every day through my meditation practices and stuff like that.
Hmm. Yeah. Um, what um what advice would you give other veterans or healthcare workers who are considering exploring psychedelics for healing? If someone came to you and let Ron ask his question first.
Okay, sure.
Oh, hi, Brock. I'm
Hey.
interested in the difference between your not setting an intention, that experience, and then setting an intention, how that's different, and if it's not too personal to share what some of those intentions were.
Okay. All right. So, um, when I didn't set my intentions, I felt like there was not, it's hard to put words to. And no, I don't mind sharing as absolute much or in depth or personal as, because this is all very, I've got to be open about this stuff, right? So, especially if my goal is to help people. Um, I, I didn't feel like I had a tether to guide me. I feel like I lost out on a lot of the guiding benefits to this without having this intention. My intention initially was to just be okay, right? That was the overarching, concept of what I wanted, right? Was I wanted to take a magic pill to make me better. Um, and it didn't work like that for me. I felt like in microdosing, it was not as important or crucial. I think it is important, and I think that it did help with my microdosing journey, especially in later on when I did set my intention. My intentions with my microdosing are very much what I need out of my day to day life. So if I feel myself slipping into depression, I will wake up and I will say, I need very much uh, to get back to this place where I am contented, where I don't want to kill myself, where I do want to brush my teeth every day, where I do want to have small moments with my child. And then I microdose, and these things start feeling like they come to fruition, or even maybe more like it opens my it reminds me of the things that I need to do day to day, of the importance of certain things, the things that don't matter nearly as much. My more finding joy in these smaller moments has been very big. Um, it, it it I feel like I am a creature of amnesia. Like I have these big moments, and I found this even in sobriety as well. Before I found is that I will do certain things, meditation, prayer, physical physical activity, those things that make me feel grounded, happy, and joyful. And then I start feeling good, and then I'm like, all that stuff's out the window. I don't need to do that work. And then I find myself in this place of depression, and I'm like, how did I get here? How did this happen? And then I set my intention, and I think, and then it illuminates all of these things, and they don't seem near as weighty. They don't seem as hard to attain. Um, and they don't seem like work anymore. They seem like the positive things that they are. And then I start doing them again, and it's so that's kind of with the micro. With the macro, I I feel chaotic and lost when I am taking them, and almost scared of the macro dose when I'm in it. When I have set an intention of I want to understand why I am doing something. Why am I continuing to come back to this behavior pattern? Or why am I angry at my dad? Or why am I doing this, that, or the other? And then I will take a macrodose with the intent of healing, not for escape. I set my intention, I pray, I meditate, think on these things, and then this macrodose is doing exactly what it needs to do. I get to follow it along through the journey, not think so much about what I'm trying to fix. And all of a sudden, my brain is starting to solve these problems and illuminate um, the areas in which I'll come out of it and be like, wow, that's exactly why I'm angry at my dad. Or that is exactly why I am doing this, that, or the other.
And during your macro dose, after you set your intention, do you record? Do you write? Do you make any sort of notes about your realizations or discoveries?
No, I don't. Which may be a failing in myself. As you were asking that question, I was like, maybe that's probably a good thing to do. I typically walk. I typically will go into nature, and walk for. I mean, the last time I did a macro, I walked for probably 15 miles. Had my dog with me and sat and meditated in a little field. Um, I've typically used it for connection with and allowed these thoughts and processes to happen and try to carry them over. But that's probably a good thing to do.
It's a nice practice. Try it, see if it's helpful at all, and if it's too distracting, don't do it. I have found sometimes that I'll have my Bluetooth headphones on and I'll go for a walk and just put on my voice recorder on my phone and then just have a conversation as I become aware, because sometimes the insights come very quickly. So I will
Yeah,
record that and then I listen to it later. I find it helpful because sometimes you get a lot of them and some of them you just don't remember. I mean, they fly by. So it's just a thought.
voice recorder sounds actually significantly better than trying to write it all down. I don't know if I could write in that state, but definitely. Thank you.
Yeah, sure.
Yes, recording for the win. I do it as well because you can even do it in your car for us ADHD folk.
Yeah. Yeah. James has a question.
Yeah, I was going to ask along the in the same realm of the macro as well, and I guess what specifics you could share as far as like um, if as you go into it, is that what you do as far as taking a walk in nature or and like time frame like before and after, um, and also when it came to like integrating back, like do you give yourself a day ever before work and sort of even specifics and with those sorts of things?
Um, so you're asking like, can you try and reframe your question? I'm sorry, I'm struggling to understand what you're asking.
I'm so I guess for context, I haven't done a macro yet. So like the planning of it, like do you need time afterwards? A lot of those sorts of questions.
Okay. As far as that, I used to very much be very hesitant with doing a macro and then how to reintegrate or come down from it or how much time I needed before I needed to be a normal functioning human again. Um, it's funny, I'd never really recognized the fact that I'd kind of set rules for myself. I don't ever do it the night before I have to go to work. I typically, if possible, I like to do it during the day. I like to do it in the morning. That way, I've got that morning it's probably 5 or 6 hours of time that I'm checked out that I don't need to answer my phone. I don't need to communicate with anybody professionally, anything like that. And then that way, by probably, if I've done it by 7 o'clock, by 2 or 3 o'clock, I can function and drive and do those things, but I've got the rest of that afternoon to really process and think about those things and be able to be grounded in myself, to think about those ideas that had come up. Um, I don't like sleep is huge for me. And while sometimes I will microdose at night before I go to work, that way like I can still have um, you know the psilocybin working in me, and working as medicine. Um, I it, I don't like to lose out on quality sleep, so I don't do it the night before I've got to go to work. I work 13, 14 hours. So if I don't get enough sleep, I'm tired, but I don't ever feel this big drain the next day. I don't ever feel hungover from it by any stretch. I take it, and I typically feel invigorated afterwards. So
Mhm.
Yeah,
typically,
that's
if the stars align, I like to take it in the morning and be able to have that day set aside. By probably 1 or 2 o'clock, I can function. I could drive to the grocery store if I needed to, anything like that. But yeah,
I like that as well because you have the evenings to sort of decompress. You're not waking up like
exactly,
what just happened type thing. Yeah.
exactly.
Do you like it fasted? Do you eat anything before you do a journey, or do you
Um,
um
so mushrooms really used to mess with my stomach. The way I did it when I first started is kind of different than how I do it now. I don't really think about whether or not I'm fasting. If I do eat something, it's typically lighter. I do get more effect from it if I have been fasting, but I also don't like to be jittery and shaky and my glucose levels be super low. So I'll typically, if I'm going to do it in the morning, I eat something significantly lighter and then do it. But I don't let myself not do it. If today is the right day, I've waken up, I've had breakfast, and I'm like, oh, I don't have anything to do today, and today would be a phenomenal day to do it. I don't let that impede me and not do it.
yeah, love it. I have a quick question about kids. Knowing what you know about mental health and that it's happening younger and younger in people these days, do you, from your professional and personal experience, do you think that microdosing would help children rather than some of the medications and the pharmaceuticals?
I cannot answer that. I don't have nearly enough professional experience or knowledge to be able to answer that. I think that I'm sure that there are implications behind its positive effects, but I can't speak to whether a parent should or should not. Nor, and I haven't even thought about it, and I don't know if I would even want to with a child that's under the age of 18. I don't understand its implications developmentally or anything like that.
How about older adults?
I
Um,
think that I think that if you there's there's very few people that I would say don't do it. I don't even know if I've met the person that I would say don't do it. I don't think that you have to be this super broken person to gain benefits from it. I don't think that, that you need to have extreme depression to find benefits. It's the same idea of AA because I did AA and I'm a huge believer in AA and what it can do for alcoholics. But I also find that the concepts behind it could benefit people that are not an alcoholic. I find that there's very few people that could not stand to benefit from microdosing.
that's
Mm.
incredible. Yeah, there's a whole, my family would love to get them to microdose. It's so
It's
subtle
not a
and
drug.
gentle.
It's just not, it can be used as a drug.
Hmm.
Anything can be used as a drug. I've even found it within my journey that I had to fight the urge to use it as a drug. Used as a drug, it could be negative. It could have negative outcomes potentially. Um, but used as a way to benefit yourself to grow, um, I think that there's absolutely a use for it in almost every human out there. That's my very much my opinion.
I
Not
heard this really interesting perspective recently from a psychedelic podcast, and the guy was talking about recreation versus therapeutics, and he said recreation is really recreation. And that was so interesting. I had never really thought of, okay, if we're recreating like correctly with community and connections and for like, having fun, because probably all
the
work so
difference
much.
between it for me is
Yeah.
intention because
Intention, yes.
his intention. I have had intentions where it was not this big, I need to change my life today, but it was, I want to reground and enjoy the rest of my week. And I got that out of it.
Yeah.
So it could probably be argued that that was recreation. Um, but to me, I think that the difference between safe use and or good use um, is intention setting. It doesn't have to, I don't have to change my life with every use. I could just need to benefit of it, and having intention sets a guide for me and sets a guide for the mushrooms to do something beneficial. At least, like I said, yeah.
Yeah, I
I,
agree.
I have also a history with AA and NA, and I think for me the you nailed the difference is in its intention or escape slash numbness for the
Yep.
that's
Am I
like the
trying to
line.
numb myself? And I did that a little bit in the beginning of this. There was, I think that that's when things definitely changed for me with the macrodoses. Because when I stopped in that break that I had had, I think that probably the biggest precursor to that break was the fact that I was like, oh, I'm going to recreationally do mushrooms. There was no intention, there was nothing in it, and it was probably to numb and feel better. Sorry if I cut you off there.
I don't know
Oh
how
no.
to raise my hand. I am a retired special education teacher, and I have a granddaughter who's pretty severely autistic. And just based on my knowledge, I would think that there'd be a lot of benefit to this. You speak of ADHD, and I know that children nowadays are being put on some very heavy medications. And I think that doing something like this naturally um, for children, I would really be a big advocate for it. I think a lot of it's just going to be um, having parents who, like you say, are going to be open minded to using it with their kids and really being able to observe how the kids are reacting. But for kids who have trouble sleeping at night and things like that, I would, in fact, I would encourage my own son to try this sort of stuff with his daughter. I see a lot of value in that.
There are three really good books on psychedelics and autism on the MAPS website. And Kirk Miller, we're not going to do the Tuesday mornings for the moment, but Kirk Miller is who is doing the Tuesday mornings, high functioning Asperger's, and he talks very clearly about that this is the missing link for the brain on the spectrum. A lot of times because they're taking in so much information that they get to slow their brain down, and they're able to focus and have conversations and be embodied versus distracted by all the things that they're a witness to all at once, way more than the average person. But those books, I haven't read them, but I've heard people recommend them, and they're on the maps.org website. And some of them, it's complicated because sometimes in the studies they use LSD, and LSD and psilocybin works very similarly, but it's harder to do some studies, but it's similar benefits.
I mean, I've seen extreme benefits in my sensory processing since starting this. Um, I've when I say I'm ADHD, extremely ADHD, and I have a lot of the sensory issues that I've had in the past been dramatically helped, but very slowly and over time. And I think that that's where the microdosing really helped with me, rather than the macros.
Yeah, I think it's really good for ADD, ADHD.
It's beautiful.
So good. Um, I wanted to share something real quick too. We are going to be we're bringing on a specialist who is an expert in head injuries, and that psilocybin is well researched for head injuries. And we'll be sharing a lot more information on that. But head injuries can contribute to so many mental illnesses, mental imbalances, gut issues, depression, all these things. So we will be looking for people who be willing to use their experience so that we can get more and more evidence and help people with head injuries, even if the head injury has been a decade ago, right? Whether you were a child or an athlete or you just like fell and hit your head, car accident, all these things. Because sometimes head injuries can be a root cause of mental instability. And we don't always, the medical profession doesn't always like go back that far and go, that head injury that you had that we do or do not know was a concussion might be contributing to your depression, your gut issues, your anxiety, all these things, your mood changes. So we're going to be launching that probably in February, and I'll be putting emails out for that sort of thing too. But these are all root causes that we're trying to address. Addictions are part of feeling the draw to addictions and things like that because you just don't feel good in your head, right? And then there's a whole downward spiral from that. Brock,
Yes, ma'am.
any closing thoughts before well, first of all, I just want to say before we close out, I'm really, I like this. I really like this vulnerability. I think this is what the whole intention of the community is going to be. So when you're on the Soulful Bloom community, like share what's going on because like Brock's doing, like this is super healing. It may feel like uncomfortable and all these things, but this is healing. And this is how we get support, right? So like you can share the bad things, you can share the good things, you can share your questions that you have, you can share your successes. I had someone, had a horrible experience recently with microdosing, like absolutely when she took half a capsule and everything that could have gone wrong went wrong. And I was like, these are the sort of the things that we want to have in our community because that was an opportunity for her to understand that she needs to do some work before she can get to microdosing and still feel loved and supported. Like get some somatic therapy, like get some of this trauma out of your body because you felt too much too soon, even with microdosing. But the whole point of Soulful Bloom and these is that like Ben is going to be coaching with us, and we're really like I want people to know that you have access to community all the time. Okay. So that you don't have to text me or your coach, but you can also find support within the community because I don't have all the answers. I'm learning all the time. And it's really cool if we can all learn together. And then this big ripple effect of all of us together is going to go out into the world. And we need to see some changes in our, in our America. Good and bad. So, Brock, thank you so much. Any closing thoughts, suggestions? Um,
No, other than just like I said, if anybody wants to talk to me or reach out to me, I'd be happy to talk to them. Um, especially James, you're in recovery and stuff like that. If you want to talk, I'd be happy to, man. I still go to AA meetings, not as much as I used to, but I still very much uh, relate with that community and stuff like that, dude. If you need any help, please reach out.
Yep, thank you. I will. I appreciate you sharing your story.
Absolutely, man.
James, I'll get you his contact information. I'll just text you after this, okay? Yeah.
Sounds
So,
good.
Ben, do you want to explain who our third Thursday guest speaker is?
Absolutely, yeah. Before I do, Brock, thank you for sharing that. So as a veteran myself, I think we need to have that vulnerability, and we're told not to. Suck it up, you're a tough guy, you're
Yep.
fine, right? So we all have that mindset, and it's so damaging. So thank you for doing this and being willing to be vulnerable and go through this journey and share it with us. So, and yeah, I'd like to talk to you more about that too, because I can relate to so much what you were
Absolutely.
saying. So, um, but yeah, so as far
And
as
honestly,
yeah,
that oh, sorry, go ahead. No, go ahead.
well, I was going to change topics and talk about the third Thursday uh, speaker. So,
Absolutely.
yeah, yeah, Matt Kinnenberg, he's a friend of mine. We met through the health world, so initially through functional medicine, and we kind of branched off and started doing our own uh, health journey, together. More specifically with veterans. Uh, we open that up though, just everyone needs help. It's not just the veterans. So we work with everybody. But he is the reason that I got into the psilocybin world in the first place. So he's very knowledgeable. He's very unique in that he does it with a group called Sacred Hunting. So he'll talk more about that. I believe they work when they do it, it's 1 to 2 grams. So it's not so much microdosing, but he is very knowledgeable with that as well. But he's of Navajo descent, so he's really unique in that Native American tradition. He's very big on the hero's journey, archetypes, and things like that. So yeah, join us if you can. He's a very inspirational person when it comes to this just the psilocybin world and the mushrooms.
Thank you. We really want to bring in more of the indigenous understandings around psilocybin because it's not something I have talked about at all. It's not something we've shared as a community, and it's a missing link for something that we really need to honor. I feel like so much of this is like the science and the EEGs and all the, quantifying and making it valid. But this has been a long time evolutionary process that the natives understand deeply. So this is going to be great. We'll put out, of course, emails for everyone. Any closing thoughts for anyone?
Ben, I'd really like to connect with you on the veteran side of this. If there's anything I can do to help, to be within that community, I would. That's one of the big things that I did want to, and I didn't talk about it much tonight. She set me up to be able to talk about the veteran stuff. Um, but if there's anything, if there's people that need help, or if there's any ways that I can help in that, I would love to be a part of it.
Oh yeah, plenty of ways you can help. So, and just real quick, and I won't keep everyone, but you mentioned it being kind of like hippie and not really for that type of group, and I really think they'd benefit from it. And that's the roadblock I'm running
Yep,
into is they're like, well, and they just take it recreationally or just not with those
yep,
intentions. So just kind of shape shifting that. So yeah, let's connect and we'll talk more about that.
that'd be
Absolutely.
awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome.
I'll do
Good
a
deal.
text intro to you two, you and James and Ben and Brock too. Um,
Yep.
Everyone, thank you so much for being here and showing up and listening. Brock, I can't thank you enough. I am so inspired by you and appreciate everything. And we'll share this video on the community page. So also share it if you feel like it would help anybody. You can always, if you share it with someone and they want access to Brock, Brock, should I just what should
You
I
can give
do?
everybody my number. That's fine.
Okay.
That's fine.
It's probably easier that way.
Absolutely.
All
Thank you.
right. You're welcome. Everyone, blessings. Happy New Year. Thank you, Brock. And if we don't
Yeah.
see you on the platform, join the platform because soon you'll only be able to get your medicine on the platform. So we'll go through all this again and again. But for now, thank you. Big love to everyone. And we'll see you soon.
Good
Bye,
night.
Brock. Thank
Bye.
you.